T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
T minus.
Hello.
Hey. This is your girl, Stephanie Hardy of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast and aka Mama Dirt Sheets and a commentator for the Belladonna division. Welcome to Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. I'm so happy to be here with you guys to give you women's wrestling talk news, but I am not by myself, thankfully. I am here with this woman just has so many hats that she wears in wrestling. She's a writer for WrestleTalk.com. She's a contributor for BellToBells.com. And she was featured in PWI today with her article on NWA Empower. Please welcome Ella J.
Hey, Steph, I'm so happy to be here. This is my first news broadcast, so I'm even more excited to not only talk, obviously, everything PWI. That itself is major news, but I'm so excited. And thank you, everybody, for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the news edition. We have so much to talk about, so, Steph, we should just get right into it, right?
Yes, we should. And so much of wrestling has already changed up even in the last couple of hours. Like, even in the last couple of hours, so much has changed with Crown Jewel, of course, being today. But we have to start with the official Pro Wrestling Illustrated Women's 150 list that was released earlier today. And there was a lot of great news about it. And there was just a lot of great reactions to it. But to mention the top 5, of course, number 5 was Thunder Rosa, who has had an amazing year, especially with her historic match she had with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, who is the AEW World's Women's Champion. She is number 4. And then number 3 was, surprisingly to me, Deonna Purrazzo.
4 was actually Britt Baker. Deonna was number 3.
Yeah, Deonna was number 3, which surprised me because I thought for sure, like, maybe she would be, I thought she was going to be number 1, to be completely honest, because I just didn't see someone who, like, I saw someone who was holding a title for as long as she has been number 1, and then also holding multiple titles as well. It's just like, I thought she would be number 1, but it's okay though, because number 3 isn't bad. And then for number 2, we have Utami Hayashishita from Stardom Wrestling, and number 1 was Bianca Belair.
And we just talked about this we got off an hour ago on Women's Wrestling Talk, a panel in collaboration with Bell to Bells and PWI and Women's Wrestling Talk, where we broke down all of that. But yeah, the major news is that Bianca Belair, the EST of WWE, is the number 1 woman on the top 150, which that itself is also major news, because having expanded last year from 100 to now 150, I think speaks volumes to the level of competition and competitors in the women's wrestling landscape today. There's just so much going on today. It's really a cool celebration for women's wrestling.
It really is. And just the amount of people, the talented people who are on the list, like, it's just, I mean, you have her, you have Masha Slamovich, who actually just tore it up at Impact's Knockouts Knockdown and got, signed as a knockout. And then you also have Tootie Lynn, who is from St. Louis, who we saw, come in second at the NWA Women's Invitational Cup. Like they're just, and Trisha Dora, who is the Pan African World Diaspora Champion. Just so many talented women, on this list who have just made all kinds of waves. And I'm just so proud to have even either met or even interviewed with some of these women, even this past year. And with Bianca Belair, with the stellar year that she had, I mean, you can't even question her being number one at all, because for someone who had just started, in 1 year on the main roster, it's like she was able to win the Royal Rumble coming in at number 3, be in this historic main event match with Sasha Banks, with being the first 2 Black women to ever main event a WrestleMania, win the title, and then hold the title for as long as she did, even performing at Rolling Loud, which was a huge endeavor in and of itself. And of course, with all of her amazing performances, even after she lost the title, it's hard to argue that she shouldn't be number one, even though, yeah. So how do you feel about that, Ella?
Well, I was on the committee, the rankings committee for this year's PWI Top 150s list. And so it was really hard, the top 3. Like, you can make arguments for Utami, you can make arguments for Bianca, or like you said, even Deonna. Like, we talked about it on Women's Wrestling Talk, like we said on our live stream earlier today. It literally came down to a tie-breaking vote between number 1 and number 2. And Bianca
Mm.
Belair ultimately was that number 1 ranked woman in the world. And like you said, you did a great synopsis of her year, and undoubtedly she also won an ESPY. That itself speaks major volumes to the influence that Bianca Belair has had and has really stepped up, especially in the absence of basically a lot of the 4 horsewomen this last year. We've had stints where Charlotte was gone. We've had, obviously, Becky was gone for most of the evaluation period. Bayley's been gone since about midsummer, and Sasha Banks was also gone for 4 months. And Asuka has been gone for a little bit too. And so Bianca Belair really, really stepped up and has really been consistent throughout this whole period. And so, again, wrestling is subjective, and you can make a case for a couple of other people, like you said, Deonna Purrazzo, again, maybe a possible arguable number 1 as well. She's definitely been consistent as well, but officially Bianca Belair is the number 1 ranked woman on the 2021 PWI Top 150 women's list. And like you said, there's been a lot of cool people on that list. Trisha Dora also was the highest ranked unsigned talent. Obviously, she is with Ring of Honor now, but during that evaluation period, she was not signed anywhere. So she is the highest ranked unsigned talent during that evaluation period in making the top 20. And also another unsigned talent in that top 20 is Giselle Shaw, who is the Rev Pro undisputed British champion and also the Progress Women's champion. So I think the fact that we have 2 unsigned talents in the top 20 really says volumes to their level of competition and the in-ring work and the growth that women's wrestling really has over the past year. And I'm just looking forward to see how this next year is going to go, because women's wrestling keeps getting better and better.
Yes, it's absolutely beautiful and stellar that so many unsigned talents actually got to be on the list, where I'm pretty sure I can imagine like years ago that probably wouldn't have been the case. But just the idea that this is happening now, and women's wrestling is just getting bigger and bigger, it's just wonderful. And it's a wonderful sight to see as a fan and as a person who, sort of works in the media as well. And I'm just so excited for you, because you actually got to contribute, to the list. And then on top of that, you also have an article featured in the magazine as well about Empower. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, obviously you were at NWA Empower. Like I said, this week is really a celebration of women's wrestling. And obviously one of the big highlights, I think, of this year, it was NWA's first ever all women's pay-per-view, where they brought in so many people from AAA, from Impact, from AEW, from NWA to the independents. And obviously Mickie James spearheaded that all. And so I was presented with this opportunity after going to NWA Empower and feeling that magic in the air, and it was so cool putting it together. And I have to thank, though, Mickie James, Deonna Purrazzo, and Chelsea Green for lending their voices in guiding that article, because I feel like that was just a huge light on women's wrestling, and hopefully it sparks some progress in some other promotions to follow suit and realize that women's wrestling is a draw. And of course, Ring of Honor has been doing great things with their women's division lately. Impact is always killing it. And so hopefully because of that, I mean, women's wrestling did not always used to be like this. It is in a male-dominated business, but I think this year we've really set the bar really high, and it's about continuing to be loud. As Deonna Purrazzo said in the closing quote in the article, it's about being loud and not accepting anything less. So that was super exciting.
Yes, well, congratulations to you, and definitely big ups to Mickie James and Chelsea Green and Deonna Purrazzo for lending their voices to that article. I look forward to reading it, because all of this released while I was at work, so I wasn't able to read anything.
Literally,
so, oh my God, I can't wait to read it.
I literally was at work all day. I was trying to check my phone like on the sly, but I mean, but yeah, it's a really cool issue. And like, there's a hot seat interview with Renee Young, Renee Paquette. There's also Layla Gray has an interview in there with her partner. And then there's just so many cool things. And obviously a tribute to Daphne, and then obviously the top 150 women's rankings. There's the whole issue. There's so many cool stuff. There's so much cool stuff in it.
Yes, definitely. And then on top of that, on top of all of that, we had Crown Jewel, which took place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And when it comes to the women, they really showed up and showed out. You had Jessica Carr, who was able to referee. And then you also had the triple threat match involving Sasha Banks, our number one, Bianca Belair, and Becky Lynch. And from what I heard, that was a pretty awesome match, right? With Becky Lynch even retaining, which sort of leaves SmackDown and Raw in flux, because, Charlotte is now Charlotte is still the Raw Women's Champion, and she's going to SmackDown tomorrow. And then Becky is going to Raw, and she's a SmackDown Women's Champion. So that's kind of leaving everything in flux. But from what I heard, there was a lot of greatness that happened. Bianca lifted Sasha with one arm.
I saw that gif. I was just in awe. I did not get to see the show, as like Steph said, we were at work, but I did see that gif of Bianca lifting Sasha up with one arm. Like, that was incredible.
Yeah, that was absolutely stellar. And I'm really happy that the women were able to, do what they came there to do, and really, show up and show out, for that event. Because of course, when Crown Jewel first started, the women weren't initially allowed to, but now they are. And so with them being able to do this, it's just really incredible. And on top of that, you had the Queen's Crown Tournament finals in which Doudrop and Zelina Vega faced each other, and Zelina Vega won, and now she's the first ever Queen's Crown winner. She's the Queen of the Ring. So congratulations to all of these women who showed up and showed out at Crown Jewel today. And of course, tomorrow, there's still so much I could go on because there's SmackDown. But we just want to say congratulations to all the women who were featured on the PWI 150 list, and to the women who participated in Crown Jewel on today / tonight. So that was really great. Oh, we have a comment. Joseph Boza, shout out to you. Hi. Says, for Crown Jewel, the wrestlers really tried not to make it feel like a glorified house show. It does feel like that. Listening to it, I appreciate your input, Joseph, but listening to it, I actually felt like it was a bigger deal this time around. It felt like the audience was really into it. Like, they were really enthusiastic about everything that was going on. They were so positive. And this actually sounded like it was a bigger deal to me than the others have previously been. What do you think, Ella?
Again, I have not had the opportunity to watch it yet. I do know Roman Reigns retained. In what fashion, I don't know. Those are the only matches I know. Like, I also saw there was a camel that Riddle came out on for RK Bro.
Yeah, I listened to that
photo of that.
Yeah, and it was really interesting, but it was completely on brand for what Matt Riddle would do, riding a camel.
again, those are just some of the highlights I've seen, but it does seem though, again, like this is her stream making for women because you not only have one but two matches then. And I mean, we can go on a sidebar about the quality of the Queen of the Ring matches, but they did make herstory in Saudi Arabia today, and obviously that triple threat match was absolutely incredible from what I hear, even just seeing that gif of Bianca Belair lifting up Sasha. And so I feel like now, I mean, Becky Lynch does retain, but we're also like wondering what's going to happen now that this draft picks are going to be in place. We're going to be seeing some new faces on Raw and some new faces on SmackDown coming up tomorrow. So it's going to be interesting how WWE plays this out, whether it's simple title swapping or we do have Survivor Series coming up next month. Could be something going down there. We don't know yet.
No, we don't, but that's the fun part and that's the beauty of it. We just get to wait and see. So, and also in light of, these women, there's more to talk about with Sasha Banks. She had an exclusive interview with Bleacher Report, where she was talking about various things like her experience on the Mandalorian show, if you're a Star Wars buff. And then she also talked about her place in women's wrestling. And then she talked about, her dream opponents for another WrestleMania main event. In this exclusive interview with Graham Matthews of Bleacher Report, she mentioned that she sees herself main eventing WrestleMania either against Charlotte Flair, who she's faced multiple times before, who I believe is one of her greatest rivals, Bayley, who could also be one of her greatest rivals as well, or, in a surprising twist, Nicki Minaj. And she said that because she predicted that she would face Bianca Belair this year in the main event, that either of those things could happen. So, Ella, how would you feel if Sasha Banks got in a main event match with either one of those three, including Nicki Minaj?
I feel like Sasha Banks would absolutely dominate if it was against Nicki Minaj. It would be interesting to see how much training Nicki would have going into it, and if she could pull off like a Bad Bunny like good surprise in-ring performance, or if it would just be more like cinematics and like entertainment value. But in regards to Flair and Bayley, I mean, arguably I guess two of her biggest rivals it is possible to get Flair and Banks at next year's WrestleMania because they are traveling to the same brand after these draft picks go into full effect on SmackDown. So it is very much possible. They have yet to go one-on-one at WrestleMania. Obviously, we had that triple threat match with them and Becky a couple of years ago, but
yes,
obviously like Sasha Banks's biggest rival, I think in everybody's eyes, is Charlotte Flair. And I mean, going up against the Queen, going into WrestleMania season, I think those two are definitely going to be the two faces of SmackDown, the prominent women on the brand, but also Bayley got injured about July, right before Money in the Bank, and I think they said like 9 months, which would put us at April. So it is possible Bayley could be on track to return by then, but maybe build up a program. So never say never in wrestling, but I think Flair is definitely the more likely out of the three. And I'm okay with that because I'm okay with them rebuilding their rivalry as long as we don't have that hot potato again.
Oh, yes, definitely. That was the worst. I feel like that was one of the worst parts of that feud was just the fact that they were hot potatoing the title at the time. But the wrestling and the action, it's like I could watch them wrestle each other like all day long. And when it comes to her and Bayley, of course, her and Bayley have that history because, of course, they had that historic match at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn in 2015. And then they fought each other at Hell in a Cell last year, and that was really stellar as well. It's like you can't really go wrong with those two at all when it comes to them main eventing. We have another comment. The Shadow Ranger, said, I hope WWE would never be crazy enough to put a singer in the main event of WrestleMania. Oh,
I mean, it's WWE. Like, honestly, they pull out some crazy stuff. I mean, Bad Bunny pulled out that amazing Canadian Destroyer at Mania earlier this year. I mean, who's to say? We've seen some surprising things. So I say never, especially in WWE, honestly.
Right. And also, and for me, like I would see Cardi B doing something like that more than Nicki Minaj, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Because she has that whole Facebook series where she tries new things all the time.
Mhm.
So who's to say that she wouldn't try wrestling? And considering her and Lacey Evans had that little Twitter spat earlier, well, it was last year or this year, they meld together. It's just like, I mean, you never know. Like, she could want to start, you know, a feud with Sasha Banks, but I wouldn't be opposed to it myself either, as long as the action is good.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that entertaining value is always going to be there, like with any of those three opponents. But I mean, Charlotte Flair is definitely the most likely out of the three if we're talking about heading into this in the upcoming WrestleMania.
Yeah, definitely. And then it's going to be in Texas too, so you know they got to do it big. Yes. So next on the docket, we have to talk about Jayne, who suffered an injury, or it looks as if she suffered an injury on NXT 2.0 this past Tuesday. Of course, you know, she's in Toxic Attraction with Mandy Rose as the leader, and the other member is Gigi Dolan. Jayne she suffered a nasty fall during an attempted suicide dive during a triple threat match with Purrazzo and Io Shirai, who's the NXT Women's Tag Team Champion, along with Zoe Stark. She was checked out by NXT's medical team, but then during commercial break, they escorted her backstage as Persia and Io continued the match. And it was reported by Wrestling Observer Live that she underwent a full CT scan, and it reportedly passed it, which could be a sign that she did not sustain a concussion. And she is still scheduled to team up with Gigi Dolan against Io Shirai and Zoe Stark and Indy Hartwell and Persia Pirotta in the Scareway to Hell ladder match next week at Halloween Havoc. So with that news, it's like, I know I saw the video on Twitter, and that fall was a little bit nasty, and you know, you do have to be careful, you know, when you're in the air, you know, so you can, you know, launch yourself out so you can land on your opponent there. But you know, mistakes happen. Wrestlers are human beings, and it is okay. So we're wishing her the very best in this situation. So Ella, did you see NXT 2.0 at all last night?
I did. I got
not
to
last
see
night, but Tuesday.
I know what you meant. I did get to see bits and pieces of it. That was a nasty fall. At least, though, if she unfortunately isn't cleared, you can have Mandy Rose step up in that situation because she is a part of Toxic Attraction, although she seems to be going the NXT Women's Championship route. So at the very least, though, you could have Mandy Rose step up. But it is unfortunate if for some reason she isn't cleared, because they've been on a good run so far since really forming as a team. And so it would be interesting to see if they would have Rose step up, but hopefully, and it's also kind of scary though, especially if she even if she did have a scare, like heading into this intense Scareway to Hell ladder match, that's got to be even like more daunting. And again, I can't speak for her, but we do wish her a speedy recovery, especially because they're just getting their foot out of the door with Toxic Attraction. They're really going on an upward trajectory, and they seem to have trust in them as a new faction, especially with Mandy Rose leading them. So we'll see what happens. Again, we probably won't know for sure until Tuesday to see if a replacement will be named or if she will go on.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily mind seeing Mandy take her place either, but also in the same sense, Mandy is sort of gunning for that NXT Women's Championship. So who's to say, like you said, I do appreciate where Toxic Attraction is going.
Yeah.
They're sort of setting them up to sort of be like the new, this is going to sound crazy.
You're going to say
Undisputed
Absolution.
Era.
Oh, Undisputed Era. I thought you were going to say Absolution.
Oh no, like they're setting them up to be the new Undisputed Era in the sense that they're gonna all have titles on them, you know, at some point. Maybe not now immediately, but in the near future, like all of them could have the titles and they would, you know, set themselves up to look that dominant. And I just immediately think of the Undisputed Era when it comes to them in NXT, because they all had the titles at some point. So I think that would be really cool, but we do wish Jayne a speedy recovery. Joseph is commenting on something else. Yeah, I could see them pull Toxic Attraction and just have a regular ladder match with Io and Zoe defending, and Indy Hartwell and Persia. A ladder match is scary after Jacy with that fall. Definitely.
Obviously, safety and health first. You know, the show must go on. But again, we'll see. We don't know for sure what's going to happen.
Yes. So also in the news, we have Impact Knockouts Champion Deonna Purrazzo, our beautiful number 3 on the PWI list today, talking about interest in working with AEW Women's World Champion Dr. Britt Baker DMD in a tag team capacity. So she stated in an interview that she talked that her and Britt Baker, who are best friends in real life, talked to Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore and AEW President Tony Khan, and in the idea that she would want to work with her and sort of use that forbidden door rule to sort of work with her as opposed to working against her. She's quoted as saying, "Yeah, I know that Britt and I have both done that. Went to Scott and went to Tony and was like, when can we make this happen? I think it was a matter of time and when it would be right. That's why I started saying we should just be a tag team, because one of us has to lose the championship if we wrestle each other. But if we wrestle with each other instead of against 2 other people, maybe at Impact Wrestling where there's Knockouts tag team champions, we can wrestle the champions and become tag champions there. So that way it's the best of both worlds. No one is a loser in that situation. We all win, right?" Now, I would be more intrigued to see them fight each other. But seeing them tag with each other would be cool, you know, in thinking about what she said. If either one of them would have to fight each other, one person would have to lose their title. So I understand that, but it's just so much more intriguing to see them fight each other. What do you think, Ella?
Deonna's been very vocal about wanting to go through that forbidden door because obviously AEW and Impact have had this crossover with like Kenny Omega, the Good Brothers, and Christian Cage and a few others, but the women have yet to cross over in some capacity, which I don't know why they haven't, because I mean,
Right.
Impact is definitely aligned with NWA and a couple of other people, but AEW still has not gone into the Impact zone for the women's division, and the Impact girls have not gone into AEW with the obvious exception of Kiera Hogan, but that was because her contract was up. So, I mean, Deonna's been very vocal about wanting to wrestle Britt Baker and also Chelsea Green, who are her real life best friends. Like, she has said that she wants that triple threat matchup, but also obviously it would be so cool to see number 3 versus number 4, or even them teaming together. I think could be a really unstoppable team. I mean, really, who's better than them besides obviously number 1 and number 2? But these 2 are more likely, I think, to really like the possibility of them to actually tag team together is, I think, it's very possible. I think it's just a matter of both sides coming to an agreement and finally giving the women a chance to really go through that forbidden door in AEW. Impact's been open to it before. I mean, Chelsea's been an NWA, Ring of Honor, and Impact, obviously. So Impact seems to be more open to it. It's just now up to AEW to really allow the women to cross over even more. So I'm excited. I really want this to happen. I think like the people want it. Obviously, Purrazzo and Baker want it as well. So come on, Tony Khan, and come on, Scott D'Amore. Let's book it.
Yes, please book it, because honestly, like, there's so much that AEW and Impact could do, because Impact's women's division, their knockout division, is so stacked and so talented that it surprises me that they haven't thought about this before now. Like, I just don't understand how is it they haven't thought about this before now. So doing it and actually having 2 of the most dominant champions at this point, you know, with Britt and with Deonna, it's a no-brainer to me. And even Jordan Grace has talked about it, you know, before. So it's just, I mean, why not open the forbidden door more so for the women, as well as the men. So I think that would be really great. We have another.
Maybe we could see a 1-on-1 if it's a non-title match. Oh my gosh, imagine though if it is a title match and then it's Deonna 3 belts. Like, this is just a possibility. But yeah, I mean, it could just be a non-title match. I mean, like there's just so much possibilities. Like, it could easily just be a non-title match, honestly.
Yeah,
that's an easy way to go too.
It could be, but either way, you know, it's a win-win for all of us. It really is a win-win
if they book it.
Yeah, for women's wrestling and for all of us as a whole. So lastly in the news, we have the IInspiration, who was formerly known as the Iconics, as Cassie Lee and Jessica McKay revealed the origin behind their new tag team name. So on Tuesday, Impact Wrestling had a media call in which Cassie Lee and Jessica McKay participated in. And now, since they're known as the Inspiration, they talked about their debut match which is set for Bound for Glory this Saturday against DK. And in the midst of that, they talked about the origin for their name. And Jessica stated that there were many names thrown around, some of them good and some of them horrible. And they were bouncing stuff off of a wall to see what sticks. But Cassie deserves all the credit because she was watching the classic film Bring It On and heard the part where the Clovers call themselves inspiration leaders. And because she heard that part where they call themselves inspiration leaders, that was what, triggered her to have the thought of calling themselves the Inspiration. And now they say inspiration 100 times a day and it just feels right to them. So in light of, I feel like people look at movies like Bring It On and like Mean Girls and stuff like that, and they sort of, poo-poo off their impact on culture. But when you think about it, they really do, like movies like that really do push culture forward, and they will be known for years to come based off of their, cultural impact and the things that they address in those movies that were far ahead of their time. And the idea that that movie actually, helped Cassie and Jessica come up with this new name for themselves outside of the Iconics and rebranding themselves as the Inspiration. I mean, that I feel like that's just a really cool and an organic way to come up with a new name. What do you think, Ella?
And of course, I love the Bring It On, like kind of clap back and like tribute to it, because that's one of my favorite series ever.
Yes,
The first
me
one I saw was
too.
Hayden Panettiere, and then obviously Ashley Benson was in one as well, but that's a whole other conversation. But it's cool to see like film references made into their name, and obviously it goes along well because you have the double iconic Inspiration. But I think it's going to be even more cool to see their demeanors coming up at Bound for Glory this Saturday, where they go vie for the Knockouts Tag Team Championships against DK, Havoc, and Rosemary. So it's going to be interesting to see how they also present themselves as the new Inspiration. Are they going to be the entertaining, like silly kind of, like we're just here to have a good time, or are they going to be more serious and poised? I feel like it might be a combination of both, but it's going to be cool to see them actually return to an actual wrestling ring. And also they're vying for the Knockouts Tag Team Championships in their Impact Wrestling debut and their in-ring returns. So it's going to be super fun coming up on Saturday at Bound for Glory, where they do compete for them. But I think like they just have so much pop and so much like hype going into them that I think a lot of people are definitely looking forward to this new era as the Inspiration.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see them, come into this new form, this new form of themselves, because honestly, I felt like, them in WWE, there was so much more that could have been, done with them, and they could have been utilized a little bit better, even though, they did want to sort of see what they had to offer as separate competitors. If they had been brought back together as a tag team, a part of me feels like they really could have been, dominant. But stuff happens, but who's to say that that was really a bad thing? It could have been the best thing that could have happened to them, with them going to Impact and rebranding themselves and bouncing back in this way. So I look forward to seeing them bounce back as a part of the Knockouts Tag Team division, and seeing them face off against Decay, and watching Bound for Glory as a whole, because you also have Mickie James versus Deonna for the Knockouts Championship as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing everything that they have to offer. The Shadow Ranger says, I wish Inspiration were coming in as baby faces. I think their comedy works better as faces. Well,
I mean, it's possible we could, again, I think they're going to be cheered though going in initially, even if they end up turning. I think going in they're going to get a huge pop. Again, we don't know if they're going to come in as more comedic or serious or more poised, but they did also have their new music video just dropped too for their theme song, which was super cool. It definitely has a pop vibe. I've heard the song. I haven't seen the music video yet, but I've seen the photos on Twitter and they look absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I saw the pictures too, and they did look great. So I'm looking forward to it, definitely. So this sort of wraps up this episode of Women's Wrestling Talk in the news edition. Ella J, thank you so much for joining me, for this experience with the news, with so much that has happened on today. Tell the people where they can find you and follow you.
I have a lot of projects, but if you go to my Twitter account, which is right below at It's Ella J, you can find all my links in my Linktree bio. That's in my Twitter. You can find my Linktree in my Twitter bio with everything with women's wrestling talk and Bell to Bells and our Wrestling Gal podcast and everything else. But Steph, thank you for having me. Of course, I love working with you. And where can the people find you?
Well, you can find me, your girl Stephanie Hardy at Queen Steph Hardy, like it says below, on Instagram and on Twitter. And you can follow my podcast, The Hardy Wrestling Podcast, on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on Twitter at Hardy WrestlePod. So thank you so much for joining us. And also remember to check out everything that Women's Wrestling Talk has going on. You can follow Women's Wrestling Talk on all social media platforms at WW Talk Pod, like it says below on your screen. And you can check us out on YouTube as well and just see all of our amazing videos. And you can follow our website at www.talkpod.com. Thank you guys for joining us for the news edition of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. And until next time, bye, y'all.